So to start off with here, we're going to, so there were three motions, two motions and a bill that we are going to discuss now. The first was the universal basic income. The second was a proposed wealth tax, or a motion for a wealth tax. And the third is the bill on pharmacare. Now, the first two, again, the first two were motions. The pharmacare bill is an actual bill. So if that gets voted, there have been votes on the first two, but if that one actually gets voted for, it is going to become law. Now, the first one, motion 46, the universal basic income motion, was tabled by Leah Gazan, absolute base Leah Gazan. She is the Indigenous MP from Winnipeg Centre in Manitoba. She first put it up on August 10th. And then I think it's because, you have to put the motion forward and then you put it forward again a second time. So the second time was in September. And what it did was it just called for CERB, the CERB, the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. Yeah, right. I forgot the name of it for a sec. It's been so long, it seems like. To convert that into a permanent guaranteed livable income. So it would extend the $2,000 a month for every single person. Over 38,000 people signed the petition that Leah Gazan had going around and the NDP had going around in support of the motion. So I'll go into the motion a little bit, the actual motion a little bit, and then the polling. And in all of these motions, we're going to go into the polling as well, and how they're viewed by Canadians. So I'm going to read the whole motion because it's not very long. Quote, that in the opinion of the House, the government should introduce legislation and work with provincial and territorial governments and Indigenous peoples to ensure a guaranteed livable income. 1, account for all regional differences in living costs. 2, for all Canadians over the age of 18, including single persons, students, families, seniors, persons with disabilities, temporary foreign workers, permanent residents, and refugee claimants. 3, to be paid on a regular basis. 4, not requiring participation in the labor market, education, training, or training in order to be eligible, so no means tested. It's just a universal program. In addition, 5, in addition to current and future government public services and income support meant to meet special, exceptional, and other distinct needs and goals rather than basic needs, including accessible, affordable housing, social housing, and expanded health services. Replace the Canada Emergency Response Benefit on an ongoing and permanent basis in a concerted effort to eradicate poverty and ensure the respect, dignity, and security of all persons in Canada. And its domestic and international legal obligations. So what it was saying, what we saw within there is something that actually it makes this proposal for UBI distinct for what, for example, Andrew Yang in the United States was arguing for, which was it was a universal basic income that actually diverted funds from the rest of the social safety net. So he said an argument that he would make was, people say it was so expensive, but actually what we would do is make it an opt-in basis, and you could either choose, it wasn't an opt-in basis, actually, sorry, excuse me, but, it would, if someone was getting food stamps and welfare and stuff, that the UBI would actually be more, so it would just transfer to that. And so it was a way, it was a liberal, use of it to try effectively and kind of undercut the social safety net. I don't think Andrew Yang actually specifically had that in mind, but that's the effect of what it would be. And what you see in this proposal, is an addition to the social safety net. Everything else considering, we still need universal pharmacare, we still need dental care, we still need all these things, as well as a guaranteed basic income. Before we go back into the discussion, I'm just going to go to the polling. And also, Leah Gazan wrote a letter to Justin Trudeau. I'm just going to read an excerpt from that. Governing is about choices. And during the time of the COVID-19 pandemic, the choices we now make can be life and death decisions, especially for individuals who are already inadequately served by our social safety net prior to the pandemic. I acknowledge that these are difficult and trying times for all. Each day, we see more and more businesses closing down, many thousands of people being left unemployed, families and individuals becoming increasingly financially compromised, and in the worst cases, ending up homeless. In fact, we now have a rapidly increasing population of individuals and families experiencing homelessness for the first time. This is unacceptable. It is the responsibility of the federal government to care for all persons in Canada, and COVID-19 is demonstrating that this is far from our current reality. I get more concerned as I receive calls from families in crisis fighting to keep a roof over their heads, some of whom are now living in shelters. All people living in Canada deserve better and need to be able to continue to live in dignity with basic human rights. She's always going on about how poverty is how poverty is inseparable from human rights, because it is a human rights and it's a huge human rights issue facing Canada and the world today. This is especially imperative now that Health Canada has indicated the need for social distancing, social isolating, and frequent hand washing, yada, 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 about COVID-19. So it is very connected with COVID-19, and you really did see that that CERB and the pandemic really made people kind of realize that we'd need something like UBI. Polling for UBI, of all these three motions and bills that we're going to go through, or the concept of them, it is still above water. It's still the majority of Canadians support it. It's actually 59% are in favor of it, so long as the wealthy pay for it, because they when they were asked if they would accept a tax increase to pay for it, they all said no. But it is the least popular out of all of them. I think it's because the support among Conservatives is particularly low. So 75%.
Which is ironic, considering Milton Friedman, the architect of like modern neoliberal and monetarist economic theory, actually also proposed a UBI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The way polling divides it up, from parties, 75% of 2019 Liberal voters supported it, which is pretty fucking high. More than 4 in 5, which means about 85% or something like that of New Democrats support it, and most Conservatives are not in favor of it. I'm not sure. The actual thing did not have a study on or it didn't have polling on the block, not that I saw. Women are more likely to support it than men, and despite support levels, though, at least 48% of residents in every region of the country feel that a UBI would be too expensive for Canada. So it is really popular. It is really doable, but it does not have the overwhelming support of Canadians. But it does have a majority support in some instances. Unfortunately, that was voted down in Parliament.
Do we know the proportions of each party and how they voted?
Leah Gazan posted something about it.
The Greens were definitely in favor. The Greens have had this in their platform since even before the NDP were talking about this. They were the first adopters.
I'm not sure, but it was voted down, I think, quite substantially. I don't think it was close. I think all New Democrats voted for it. But
it was probably one of those things where it was all the Greens, all the NDP voted in favor. Everyone else minus maybe a couple here and there.
I think a couple Liberals voted for it. But again, this would have been a motion. So had this been adopted, then actually there would have been. It's not binding, right? It's a motion, but there would have been more movement towards that. What is much more shocking? Not shocking, but. It seemed to hit harder the motion on the wealth tax. This was proposed by Peter Julian, absolute-based NDP MP from New Westminster, Burnaby in BC. There was a resounding 27 votes in favor, all of them, all NDP MPs and all Green MPs, and a whopping 292 nay votes by all Conservatives, all Liberals, and all Bloc members.
I think it was actually, I was going through it. It seems like there was one singular Liberal who voted in favor.
One.
Actually, actually, you know who abstained? I just realized. I think who abstained. Aaron O'Toole abstained from this vote.
Oh, yes.
Really?
So I think...
You know what it is? It's because he's trying to paint himself as an economic populist
pro-labor
this time. Yeah, pro-labor, pro-union.
And it also has something to do...
We have to deal with inequality.
It also has something to do with how fucking popular this is. Tyler, I sent you the polling data. If you the first picture I sent you, the 338 poll. This was a poll conducted by Abacus Data between November 6th and November 12th, and I think it was released on the 19th. It was released like yesterday or something like that. 2020. The question was, do you support a wealth tax of 1% on the wealth of more on wealth of more than $20 million in net assets to help pay for costs of the pandemic? So if Tyler pulls that up before I spoil everything. There we go. So a whopping 84. Oh no, sorry. It's strongly favor. No, so it's 79% overall. Look at that. Look at Alberta. Look at Alberta. That is 79%, which is the national average, of Albertans are in support or support a wealth tax. I mean, that's phenomenal. In a province as conservative in Alberta as Alberta, not only as conservative as Alberta, they have their own complete political echo chambers there. I mean, like the climate change denial then climate science denial that comes out of Alberta, they're like, it's not even like that there is no breaking a lot of them out of their that sphere of climate change denial, right? There's nothing you can say, no studies you can point to that will actually change their mind. It's just complete and utter denial from the echo chamber in which they live, and yet they still actually support a wealth tax. In the Atlantic provinces is 84%. In Quebec, it's 78%. In Ontario, it's 78%. In Manitoba and Saskatchewan, it's 79%. I don't know why those are grouped together. In Alberta, 79%, and BC, 82%. By political party, 93% of the Bloc support it, 88% of the NDP support it, 86% of the Liberals, 85% of the Greens, and 64% of Conservatives. That is a majority, a whopping majority of Conservatives that support a wealth tax. Despite that, voted down. So the interests of Canadians are not actually served by our political leaders. They don't really care about what their constituents want. They care about courting their votes. They care about trying to appeal to them on a superficial level to try and get their support, to try and win elections, because they need them to win elections. But they don't. When they're in office, they don't actually govern in the interests of all Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
No, they govern in the interests of private capital.
Mm-hmm. And I actually had the displeasure of having sat through the entirety of the debate, all 3 hours. It was unbearable. And it becomes much worse when you listen to some of the rhetoric that was coming specifically from the Liberal Party was particularly bad, because they were indistinguishable from the Conservative Party. You had a lot of talk about trickle-down economics, about how that money's not just sitting there, it's going and it's being invested and it's building more capital. This is good. This was what we were hearing, and specifically interesting that it was chosen, this narrative, by the Liberal Party to go on. And then you also had the liberals such as Adam Vaughan, who were doing the fake progressive, we agree in principle, you're going to make me look bad when I disagree with you. We agree in principle, but this just isn't doable. And going on about that, and then criticizing, he compared it to Doug Ford's slogans, and he said it was slogan politics, and this was the narratives we were getting from the Liberal Party. And this was very against, where the public feeling about a wealth tax is. And I want to mention that this is a very, very mild version of a wealth tax. This is a 1% wealth tax on over 20.
Every dollar over 20 million.
Over 20 million.
We could be taking a lot more. Be thankful we're not proposing more than that.
We should, honestly, over 20 million, that's insane.
It's a very
low bar.
And also version. What's interesting is that unlike American politicians, I don't think there's actually a Canadian politician who has that amount of wealth.
Yeah, but I want to mention something interesting too, is because one of the narratives we were also getting from Adam Vaughan was, your wealth tax, this doesn't add up to pay for all the programs that you're talking about, and in a way, it's kind of true. So I
Thanks
want
for
to
pointing that out. Actually, we should increase it.
Yeah, which is why groups such as the DSC's affiliated Center for Canadian Progress, who we just released a paper on the wealth tax, we argue not for this flat tax, but we argue for a progressive wealth tax. And let me break down real quick what that would look like, because the way that the wealth tax, as proposed by the Center for Canadian Progress, let me just pull up the numbers. Yeah, it would, so 1% from wealth, 7.5 to 25 million, 2% from 25 to 50 million, 3% from 50 to 250, so on and so on and so on. The highest being 8% for profit over $5 billion, which is, and so this only affects a grand total, and including the NDP, it only affects a grand total of 98,000 Canadians versus the almost 38 million other Canadians who stand to benefit. So this is it affects so few. And I want to mention that under the progressive wealth tax, it would make $22 billion as opposed to $2.2 billion as proposed by the NDP. So in a way, I agree to a certain extent as to whether or not it goes far enough. But then also to that point, even this plan, which is a very mild version, is still getting shot down and criticized by the Liberal government. So it's a very stark contrast to their narrative on the campaign trail, where they like to pretend to be progressives.
Mm-hmm. Well, the liberals and conservatives. Sorry, Caitlin, go on.
No. So yeah, there's just no excuse anymore. Like, it's my whole spiel this year when it upset me is like, it's 2020. Like, things should not be the way they still are. Like, truly, it's just appalling. Like, there's zero excuse, in my opinion. It's really just showing everyone's true colors.
Get with the times, man.
Well, and those true colors are like, what reason could they have for suggesting that this is unfeasible? You know, like, we can easily, you have the power to sign this bill, to pass it into law, to make it real, this moderate proposal to increase taxes on the wealthy. The only thing stopping you is your loyalty to private capital. And it's
let's point out
it's
the
bad
hypocrisy
economics, right? The Trudeau government has increased the budget by a pretty substantial amount over the course of this, with all the relief programs, with corporate relief programs, money funneled from taxpayers directly to these private corporations and then to their shareholders and to the owners of these companies. These people that we should be taxing, really. And like, just like from a basic economic standpoint, like, you want people to have, a UBI and a wealth tax is just so logical. You want the average working class person to have enough money to then spend it on commodities so that the economy keeps running. You want to increase the aggregate demand of an economy. All the money that goes to, the 1%, the top 10%, whoever, these people that would be targeted by a wealth tax, all that money is either just lying in savings accounts or in stocks that have no effect on our economy, or they're in tax havens. This is money that's not circulating in the economy, that's causing inflation. The main function of one of the main primary functions of taxes is to stop inflation, because you're taking that money out of the economy. It's like, I wish, we need to get in the habit of telling these fiscal conservatives to read basic economics, because economics has, developed a lot since the times of Adam Smith and Ricardo. Like, shit has happened. Depressions, recessions have happened.
And that's also,
and it's always a fault of deregulated, speculative finance fucking everything up. And wealth being too concentrated in the hands of a few fucking, robber barons. That era was called the robber baron era because they robbed everyone of their fucking wealth. And nobody had any money to spend on anything. So what do you know? The economy fucking collapses because nobody's buying anything.
Right wingers, when they talk about economics, only ever talk about theory, and they never take any only specific types of theory. They never take any historical context into account. We have proof. We know what the result of these policies are going to be.
Mystery.
We have so many examples of them. We know what doesn't work. We know what does work. And despite that, for people that always talk about how, leftists and socialists and communists are all like stuck up in theory, but fucking like look at history, socialism has never worked. Blah, 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 blah. Even though obviously it's an argument made in bad faith.
We're the only ones reading the actual
exactly. They have no sense of self-awareness at all.
None. And let's talk about something too, is the fact that the wealthiest Canadians throughout this pandemic have been they're profiting. Their profits have grown. They're making a lot more money. And I want to also point out, like,
$37 billion. That
there were CEOs of Quebec long-term healthcare facilities and in Ontario, I think, the private facilities in Quebec, who gave themselves multi-million-dollar bonuses after their institutions, their buildings, had ridiculous COVID-19 outbreaks, ridiculously high percentages of deaths. There was one that had 70 deaths in it. So they ran it like a total business with complete disregard for the people.
It's profits over people.
Absolutely. Not only did they cause the deaths of so many people's grandparents and parents, they gave themselves multi-million-dollar bonuses. These people need to be held legally accountable.
And I want to mention also is that Loblaws, which is a massive company.
I was just gonna say.
Earlier on in the pandemic, they did the whole public image thing where they're like, okay, we're going to give this raise to frontline workers to support our brave frontline workers. Okay, they got rid of that a few months later because they're like, everything's okay now. And now what do we see is that they're increasing the dividends that is being paid to shareholders, because that's really who our economy is structured to serve, is the shareholders. And like I've said time and time again, 25% of the shareholders are in the 0.1%, 50% are the 1%, and 90% are in the 10%. So this is a small. This doesn't compare to the stocks that your grandmother left you. This is we're talking. This is uncomparable in scope.
This is a whole nother segment of society that's benefiting from certain economic mechanisms and structures that are completely separate from the vast majority of the populace, of the working population. And Loblaws, I think they got like $12 million in subsidies from the government.
They got millions and millions of dollars to upgrade their refrigerations, their refrigeration systems. I'm a former Loblaws employee, actually. Funny anecdote on this: when they hire you, shout out to Bianca, she was a great manager, but I mean, I'll run a corporate they make you sign a waiver promising that you will not shit talk them on social media. You will not engage in political discussions about the company. I don't know if it's specifically about like yours or something. I'm pretty sure it's about Provigo and Loblaws as a whole. So they do have a union. They are unionized there, but they actively work to suppress any worker criticism of the institution.
And I wanted to point out earlier, I forgot to mention is also that we've seen massive, we're still funding pipelines and giving massive oil subsidies and massive bailouts to the banks and the big corporations. Yet and the Liberals have no problem with this, but then they go and turn around and question the wealth tax, and they question a UBI. Really? And
they really.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was gonna say they really just they always question why we should give like regular people money. And it's just like, it's really that, I think it's still a vestige of the whole like bootstrap thing of just like, well, you're down on your luck. Well, it's up to you. You don't have money. Sucks to be you. And it's like, wake up. Like, that's inhumane. That's not how life should be. It doesn't have to be this way. Like it was made this way. It's man-made, and very specifically man-made. Like, this was a thing, a way of living that was created by people with specific goals. And again, I always come back to white supremacy, because everything comes back to white supremacy. It's a way, capitalism is racist. Everything comes back to white supremacy. So it's just a way of telling people, like, with this motion or bill, motion that wasn't approved. Like, yeah, like it's just showing people like we don't care if you have money or not. We just care about the people in power and the people and the wealthiest people, because there's an interest there for us, but we don't care about you living in NDG. Like, no one gives a shit.
And I want to bring up an example also real quick about, because they'll talk about the feasibility of stuff, and I just want to bring up the because Finland and Netherlands have both experimented with UBIs. And there's this stereotype that the right likes to throw around of you give people free money, they're going to lay on their couch all day and not do anything, right? So I want to just bring in data to show that this is factually not true, because what they found in their experiments with UBIs in both Netherlands and Finland, one was, okay, what are people spending the money on? Food, housing, the basic necessities. That's where it mainly goes. And people who participated in this UBI experiment were more likely to find sustainable long-term employment, as opposed to people outside who were more likely to end up in shorter-term, not as sustainable employment. So this leads to sustainability, and also one thing, because we talk about keeping an eye on people having to prove that you're looking for work and this and that, right? And they did an experiment on that too with the UBI, where they did a group where people would have to prove that they were looking for work, and they keep an eye on them. And another group where they just gave them money and fucked off. And what they found was in the group where they just gave them the money and fucked off, people were more likely to find long-term employment, because at the end of the day, people know what's best for them, and you have to. Your job is to, as the government, is to help them get there, but to give them the tools they need to succeed.
I mean,
and that's what we're talking about here.
Also, to that point, if there is the requirement that they have to be looking for work, that means they're, which is like how it's structured in employment insurance right now. You have to accept reasonable work. So if people have universal basic income, they're much more likely to be able to hold out for the career that will actually best suit them, the career that will actually bring them the most happiness in their life, the career that they
which is better for the economy.
Which is better for the economy. It's better for people's lives. Better for society.
Spoiler alert for the right. Things that are good for the general population are good for you too.
And
when
also,
people have
the conservatives and the liberals are not your friends.
No. I want to add to that, because a lot of people who are against, like you were saying, giving people free money and then they're going to like sit on their ass. Like, first of all, it's very ableist, because a lot of people can't work or can't do like traditional jobs or all that sort of thing. And like, that's very dehumanizing to tell disabled people like, oh, we give you money and you're not productive. That's why capitalism is inhumane, because it's ableist. But anyways, that's not the tangent I want to go on. But to the whole point of like, I think that the point is that people might not want to work certain jobs because those jobs exploit them. So with a UBI, you become slightly less, hopefully fully, but at least slightly less exploitable. And capitalists don't want that. They want to continue exploiting you. So because for me, like take me, for example, I'm a flute teacher and flutist. If someone were to give me like $3,000 a month, I would still want to do my job, because I love it and that's what I want to do with my life. If someone were to give me $3,000 and be like, okay, keep working at the store you're working at, I'd be like, no, because I get minimum wage. I could go on about why I don't like my job, probably shouldn't, but I don't like that job. And I don't think it's a fair job, and I don't think it's equitable, etc. It's not, anyways. So in a way, it's true. Like some people won't want to work certain jobs because those jobs are not fair.
And here's a little spoiler alert.
Automation anyway. If we have a UBI,
people will be
automation can be a tool instead of fucking
exactly.
Just a quick point, because spoiler alert to conservatives also is that when people are happy and they like their employment, they're going to be more productive, and it is going to be better for the economy. Like it's so fucking simple.
It also enables people to be able to give back to the communities in ways that they wouldn't before. Because I mean, most of those initiatives don't actually pay. They're on a volunteer basis, and if you spend all your time working or looking for work, trying to keep a roof over your head, then you actually don't have time to give back to the community, and it's damaging. It's damaging to the social ecosystem. Essentially.